So in a recent video, I had a look at how the three Premier League title challengers, Liverpool, Manchester City and Arsenal, are stacking up in terms of mounting a challenge this season. And I mentioned in that video that Liverpool, perhaps surprisingly, had the toughest fixture schedule of all three challengers so far this season. And I guess that kind of begs the question then, what's coming up for these three title challengers? What is waiting for them at the other side of the international break and then just before the next one? And how can that affect the title race or the early standings? And of course, factored into that is the European games, there are League Cup games as well, and they can all have an effect on how you can keep going in the Premier League, whether you can keep up the pace, whether you are able to run away from your fellow title challengers. So done a bit of a deep dive into these fixture schedules, including the European calendar, the League Cup calendar, what they've got coming up in terms of average positions as well, and hopefully give you a good idea of where we can maybe expect the teams to be once we get into that next international break. And I'll start on an individual basis, and of course I'm going to start with Liverpool, and I'll bring up their games now, and you can see there an interesting fixture list. Obviously starting with Manchester United at home is always an interesting one, and I think one thing to note quickly before I go into the individual fixtures is that it's 4 home and 3 away for Liverpool. That's definitely the nicer mix than the other way round, and they are laid out quite nicely as well. Of course, Liverpool have just played Crystal Palace, Galatasaray, Chelsea all away from home on the bounce. You don't really want that. You want your home fixtures dropped in there quite nicely, and so you don't have to play 3 aways on the bounce, because I think the Chelsea game in particular, the last 10 minutes or so, Liverpool looked like they were blowing, and I think the trip to Turkey, the fact they'd been to Palace before that, I think it really took it out of them physically. So you'd like to avoid those sorts of runs. Unfortunately, Liverpool are avoiding that in the 7 fixtures that come at the other side of the international break. And as for the games individually, obviously Manchester United first up is a big one. They're a team that's struggling a little bit. But of course, the rivals, they came to Anfield last season when they were even worse than this, and they got a 2-2 draw, and you could argue maybe slightly improved this season. I think their expected goals for is the highest in the Premier League this season. Of course, they don't finish those chances off, but they can from game to game. So Liverpool have got to be wary, I think, coming up against Manchester United, because they went direct in that last one, and it was a tricky one, albeit I will say it's an Anfield game, and so Liverpool should have confidence that they can come out of this one with 3 points. And other side of that, Eintracht Frankfurt away in the Champions League, and I think this fixture would have been tougher 18 months ago, back when they had Hugo Ekitike, Marmoush. Of course, they've both been sold. The 7th in the Bundesliga at the moment, having won 3, lost 3, but it's a game that Liverpool have got to be careful. But I don't think they're as dangerous opponent as they have been previously, and it's one you'd think Liverpool can go out there and win. And when they get back, it's away to Brentford. Now they are 16th at the moment, but worth mentioning, their expected goal difference puts them 12th, so maybe performing slightly better than the actual position shows. And all 7 points that they've earned so far this season have come at home, and Brentford away is just tricky, isn't it? So I think Liverpool got to be wary about that one, albeit Brentford are lower down the league and Liverpool do need to start winning these games. So that's one where I think they'll feel that they should win, absolutely. Of course, onto the Cup then, and it's Crystal Palace next. I have to say, a bit of a nightmare draw for Liverpool, because I think Palace are going to have a real go at this Cup. I think they're going to go strong, and Liverpool will look to rotate, so that could make it difficult. Of course, we'll just have to see how Liverpool's fringe players and kind of youngsters can get on in this game, albeit I think it's worth mentioning that Liverpool, with the rotation, maybe this will have less of an effect on what they'll look like in the league, because of course it's going to be a much changed team. So that's probably true of all the sides that are involved in this competition still. Now the other side of Palace is Aston Villa, who were winless in the first 5 but then won 4 on the bounce, and thankfully this game's at Anfield, so they're coming in a bit of form. But I think Liverpool, they beat Villa at Anfield last season. They're more than capable of doing that again. You always prefer to be at home, and I would say the same actually against the Real Madrid game that comes up after that. It's the hardest fixture any of these title rivals have got in this run. They've only lost once so far this season. That was 5-2 to Atletico. Of course, Liverpool did beat Atletico themselves this season, but again, Anfield factor, the atmosphere, the fact that hopefully by the time it gets to this game, Liverpool have started to find the rhythm that's evaded them a little bit at the start of the season, so hopefully they can win that one. And then into Manchester City, where they won their last season 2-0, tactical masterclass from Slot. I still think Manchester City are a little bit fragile, but huge question is whether Liverpool is still fragile by the time they come to that game. So it'll be really interesting to see in terms of that. Now, of course, we're interested overall in the Premier League title race at this point. And you may remember Liverpool's average position of the teams they faced in the first part of the season was 7.9. Well, that's now down to 11 for this next run. So in theory, this is easier, and that should be helpful to Liverpool in terms of picking up results. I also wanted to look at that European League Cup effect as well, and I used Opta rankings, so they rank every side in world football really, so that I could see, how does Swansea compare to Real Madrid, for example. So I had a look through that, and so I could give a fairer ranking of these midweek fixtures. And of course, to give you an idea, Arsenal are top, PSG are second, Liverpool third, Real Madrid in seventh in those rankings. So the average position of the three sides Liverpool will face in midweek is 20. So that's quite high, you have to say. That Palace draw, like I say, is a bit of a nightmare to get them, really. But that number, probably just put it in your back pocket for now. It'll be better with the context of what the other midweeks look like for the other title challenging sides. And I will move on to Arsenal now and bring up their fixtures. And again, jumps out to you: 4 away, 3 at home. That's not as good a mix as Liverpool have got, is it? So you don't want to have to travel as much. And they have got 3 aways on the bounce there at the very end: Burnley, Slavia Prague, Sunderland. So that's not ideal for them. So, that could affect them. We'll see how they get on in terms of that. Now, as for the games individually, Fulham away, they drew 1-1 last season at Craven Cottage, lost there the season before, so it's not an easy game for them. So we'll see how they get on there. Atletico Madrid after that is, Liverpool was probably one of their best performances of the season, so Arsenal will hope to do the same, but Liverpool a little bit more expansive than Arsenal, aren't they? And I think Atletico, they've got the tactics, they've got the ability to really frustrate an Arsenal side that doesn't create loads from open play. So that'll be a really interesting one, in a game that you think from a Liverpool perspective, could it take a lot out of them? Liverpool will certainly hope so. And after that, of course, Crystal Palace at home, that is tricky. Arsenal themselves know that. They drew 2-2 at the Emirates last season, I think, after Arsenal had been 2-0 up, and Palace are just brutal on the counter, aren't they? And against a side like Arsenal, will they get those opportunities to counter? If they will, I'm pretty sure they'll make them count. Liverpool lost against Palace, obviously, not that long ago, and they know that that's a tricky game. So it'll be interesting to keep an eye on Arsenal in that one. Into the Cup, obviously you've got Brighton there. Both those games against Brighton finished 1-1 last season. I think it's like the Palace game, really. It's not an easy one. You'd like an easier cup draw than this, particularly if you make changes. But if they do make a lot of rotations and changes, then maybe that won't affect them too much for what's to come in the league. And the other side of that cup game, it's a trip to Burnley now. Again, on paper, this looks pretty straightforward, doesn't it? It's a team that I think they're 18th at the moment in the Premier League, but of course they've only lost one league home game since their last Premier League season, and that is against Liverpool this season, the 1-0. So they went through the entirety of last season, I should say the league game. They went through the entirety of last Championship season not losing a game, and yes, the opposition is better, but you get in that tight ground, it can be difficult. Their low block is absolutely brutal, we saw. So that could be something that Arsenal struggle with, and I think that's a more tricky game on paper than it maybe looks in practice, rather than it does look on paper. I can't really say the same for Slavia Prague away from home after that. I think that is a game Arsenal will be winning, and I think they can make some rotation there that will maybe help them out a little bit. But after that, it's Sunderland, and they've got 2 wins, 1 draw at home this season in the Premier League. The atmosphere there is unbelievable, and I think they could present a real challenge. It's a big game for them, really. So they'll be very much looking forward to that one, and one that Arsenal, I don't think, should go into it thinking it's going to be a straightforward win. Now, in terms of the findings really overall for Arsenal, the average position of Premier League sides they faced at the start of the season was 11.3. That's now 11.75. So slightly worse sides, and slightly lower than Liverpool's 11, but pretty even between the two in terms of what they've got coming up for them in the Premier League. The midweeks are also slightly easier in that Opta ranking. Liverpool's was 20, Arsenal's 29, but pretty evenly ranked games, you have to say, in this run. So I feel like we're going to learn a lot about how closely matched these two sides are. I'm going to move on to Manchester City next, and I'll bring their fixtures up as well, and start off with Everton there. And obviously Everton got a 1-1 draw there last season. They've only lost twice in the Premier League this season. On the first day against Leeds, which is it's the first day, you're a bit disjointed, and then of course away to Liverpool, where they really made Liverpool work for it. So that's an interesting, tricky one, I think. After that, it's Villarreal, who haven't lost at home this season. They drew with Juve there as well in the Champions League, so not an easy one. Aston Villa, I mentioned those in terms of Liverpool had got them, but of course City have got to go to Villa, which is always definitely more tough. And Villa won their 2-1 last season against Manchester City, so can be encouraged. They might get a result. Now, the cup game for Manchester City is the easiest fixture anyone has in this run, of course, getting Championship opposition in Swansea, so that should be a straightforward one for them. And again, you expect them to definitely heavily rotate. And after that, though, a very, very tough game for Manchester City, which is to face Bournemouth. It is at the Etihad, but we know Bournemouth, they are so good on the counter. They'll sit in deep, try and make it difficult for City and hit them on the break, and they've got so many capable players of doing that. And we know City have shown weakness still on the counter, so that'll be really interesting to see how they get on in that one. And pretty similar with Dortmund, actually. They haven't lost a game this season. They drew 4-4 with Juve in a bit of a thriller, so they've got the capability of scoring goals. They've definitely got pace as well, so that's a quite a tricky one, you'd have to say, really, for Manchester City, albeit that they're ending this run, as you'll notice, with a run of 3 home games, which is pretty handy. They've got 3 away games in there, but of course you get the benefits, which is the 3 home games, and then of course the next home game after that in this difficult run is against Liverpool at the Etihad, and hopefully a nightmare game for Manchester City. Liverpool very, very good there last season, as I say, with a 2-0 win, and they'll be hoping to reproduce that. And I think by the time full-time whistle blows on that game, we're going to have a very, very good idea of where Manchester City are and where Liverpool are at in terms of the title race, not just because of those games, the game itself, but because of everything that's preceded. And I guess that's kind of the overall question here. So on Manchester City, the average position of the Premier League sides, and why I think we're going to learn a lot about them, is 6.75. So Arsenal 11.75, Liverpool 11. They've got 6.75. That's a bit of a nightmare run for them. And again, we are going to find out a lot about them. Are they genuinely back up to challenging for the title this season, or have they still got a lot of the old problems? We really will see in this run. And they do have the easiest midweeks. They've got 89 as their Opta ranking, Arsenal's 29, Liverpool 20. But of course, that's dragged down that average massively by the fact that they've got Swansea. And I would say that Dortmund and Villarreal are by no means easy Champions League fixtures. So we'll see what the effects of that is. And I think overall, really, the point to make here is that I think it's very interesting. Arsenal and Liverpool have got pretty evenly matched fixtures all through this run. So, it's a period where, if one of them can get their noses in front or extend the lead, if you're Arsenal, if Liverpool can get in front, they'll feel, okay, when we've got similar fixtures to them, we are the slightly better side. So it's going to teach us a lot. And I think for Manchester City, if they can come through with a lot of wins and a little bit close to the top, they'll be feeling incredible about themselves, because they have, without doubt, got the toughest fixtures, and that one against Liverpool just feels massive as well, because of course any time you can bloody the nose of a rival, then it's always worthwhile, as Liverpool found in beating Arsenal at Anfield earlier this season. But some really interesting twists and turns coming up, I think, in this run of fixtures. So do let me know what you think about that. How many points do you think Liverpool are going to collect, or how many wins as well, if you include the League Cup fixtures? Do let me know what you think and where you think the title race will be up to after these sets of fixtures, because it's a really interesting run for all 3 sides, where I think we're going to learn a lot. And of course, if you can like and subscribe, that would be massively appreciated, and I'll see you guys very soon.